Ever feel like the parenting advice you're getting from therapists doesn't quite hit the mark? In this episode of Unlock Your Child's Full Potential, we're diving into 5 strategies that directly address the needs of autistic children and offer real practical support for the parents raising them. Our guest today, Andrea Pollack, is a parenting coach who specializes in helping parents of autistic and ADHD children. With a background that includes homeschooling her autistic son for 8 years and earning a master's degree in education to share her knowledge more effectively, Andrea's insights are rooted in both personal experience and professional expertise. She believes traditional discipline techniques often fall short for neurodivergent children and that many parents feel stuck using outdated methods. Andrea's approach focuses on intentional parenting and fostering a healthy parent-child relationship rather than just behavioral fixes. So much of parent education about autism is provided by therapists who are not giving parenting guidance. And in this episode, Andrea will show us why it's crucial to shift our perspective from punishment to support and how to transform daily challenges into opportunities for growth. Get ready to uncover powerful tools that will not only help your child thrive, but also bring more harmony into your home. Hi, Andrea. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy we get the chance to address the needs of autistic children and support the parents raising them.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
As a parent of an autistic child yourself, could you share some specific challenges you faced in parenting? Like, how does your approach need to differ from that of parents of neurotypical children? And maybe there are aspects of parenting that remain consistent across both experiences.
I think in the end, it winds up being more similar than different. That was my experience anyway. But I think when you're starting out, you think it has to be very different. And a lot of times, we get advice from professionals about things to do that are different. I understand that, but I do think remembering that we're parenting a child, that's the common denominator, and that's what's so important. We have to think about their self-esteem. We have to think about their autonomy, right? When we're parenting an autistic child, for example, we tend to try to exert more control, and it's not necessarily beneficial for the child. So that's just one example.
Why do you think traditional discipline techniques often fail for families with autistic children? How can parents better support their child's needs?
Well, I think they fail for a number of reasons, but starting with the traditional discipline techniques presume that the child is doing what they're doing on purpose, right? That they are choosing bad behavior. And traditional discipline techniques, they try to motivate the child to make a better choice. And I believe that actually when the child is engaging in what we call misbehavior, I don't love that word, but well, let's go with it. It's because they lack the skill in the moment to make a better choice. And what I mean by that is sometimes they lack the skill, period. Sometimes it may be a skill that they have, but their sensory system is overwhelmed, so they don't have the capacity in the moment to make a better choice. So if we're trying to create the motivation for them to do better, we're targeting the wrong problem. What we need to do is target the support to help them in the moment do the best that they can.
It's almost like being an investigator to see what's the cause for the misbehavior, so-called
Exactly.
misbehavior.
It doesn't mean that our children never try to manipulate us or do those things. Of course, that's part of it. But most of the time, we're setting an expectation that is above what the child is able to do in the moment. And I believe that that's probably true for most children, period. Again, it's not just about the autism, but, because so many autism therapies focus on a behavioral approach, they are focusing on the behavior and not the cause of the behavior. Mm-hmm. And so it encourages parents just to look at the behavior when it's really important, as you identified, to look at what's driving that behavior.
I truly believe in explaining and trying to communicate what is expected to help the child really gain the skill. But is communication more challenging with an autistic child? Do we need to find alternative strategies to foster effective communication with them?
It certainly can be, and we certainly have a lot of children who aren't able to reciprocate communication. But I believe that we do understand our children more than we give ourselves credit for, and more than we give them credit for, right? I think that there is a lot of understanding. If you see your child struggling, you may not know exactly what the problem is, right? If they can't articulate that they're hungry or tired or overwhelmed, in their sensory system or whatever. But in the same way that you can learn to understand your baby's cries, we know, we have a sense. And sometimes it's not important that it be exact. If you think there might be a hunger or thirst problem, you offer them both. It's okay. I don't know that we have to understand every issue explicitly. If we're willing to try to, like you said, be a detective, just understand that what they need is support and not punishment.
Yeah, I believe so. But what about other people in their life? Educators, for example, or people who are not willing to dive deeper. How do we help our kids communicate with them?
Well, I think we have to work from both sides, right? We have to help our children, and we also have to help those people understand as well. Sometimes that's an opportunity, right? To explain to a teacher if they're working with, say, a speech therapist. Just help them understand a little more about your child and what drives them. So you're working from both sides. But I guess what I would say about that is also, that's why it's even more important that parents serve that role of understanding, because our children are going out in the world and we can't control the world. So they do have to learn to manage those situations. And sometimes they use up all of their tolerance, living in a world that doesn't totally understand them, which is why it's so important when they come home to us that we do overemphasize the support over the punishment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. They show their worst side to us sometimes because they feel safe with us.
Right. And that's okay, right? They need our support more than ever, because when they go out in the world, as you said, sometimes it's hard for them to communicate with other people what their needs are. And sometimes, they express those needs in ways that are not ideal.
Would you care to share some of the strategies that have worked well in your home?
I think starting with the perspective change of, I need to stay calm, right? This isn't about punishment. So I need to start with me. I need to self-regulate first before I can then support my child. So that's really important, because sometimes, I get it. We get triggered, we get angry, we get frustrated, we get all the things. And I want parents to feel all the feelings. It's important. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about reframing your mindset in the moment to say, hold on, I don't have to feel that frustration in the moment. If I look at my child's behavior differently, then I can feel more supportive rather than the desire to punish. So it starts with that. The other thing is meeting your child where they are. And I know that's a phrase that we use, but what I mean by that is really recognizing that sometimes we're setting the expectation too high in the moment. And that's why our children are not succeeding in that moment. So really learning how to meet them where they are, set expectations they can meet so that they feel successful, so that we feel successful. And it doesn't mean lowering expectations generally. It means lowering them for now to build up to where they can be, right? As opposed to setting a high expectation and having them fail every day, right? An analogy I like to help parents with is, you wouldn't yourself decide you wanted to go into a gym and you really want to be able to lift 50 pounds. But right today, you can only lift 5. But every day you go in and you try to lift 50. Like, that wouldn't get you where you want to go, right? You'd start with 5, and then you'd build to 10, and then you'd build to 15, right? And you'd build those muscles. But there's no limit. You can get up to 50. So that's the way I think it's helpful to think about. It's not about reducing long-term expectations. It's about, in the moment, setting them up for success.
What about if you have multiple children? One is neurotypical, the other is autistic. Thinking about expectations, maybe it's a little difficult to be so patient with the autistic one when at this age, my other kid has already been able to do so and so.
Right. Well, but that's exactly why we need to start with our own self-regulation, right? Because in the moment, it's like they should be able to, and then you have to give yourself a little time out, right? And say, hold on, but my child can't right now. And my best chance of helping him or her get there is to help them succeed now. I use the example of sitting at the table a lot because it's just easy to understand, right? If your 6-year-old should be able to sit through dinner, but your 6-year-old actually can't, forcing them to stay until they get out of sorts and then have some sort of behavioral reaction isn't good for anybody. It's just frustrating everybody. So allowing them to sit for 10 minutes and then run around if that's what they need to do, that might be the best solution.
Mm.
And then you can explain to your neurotypical child, I know that we expect you to sit, and that's because you can. We can help the neurotypical children have compassion for where the autistic child is too. So that's another thing. And also, we have to examine our own flexibility, right? So why are we forcing these rules, right? Is there some room we can create for the neurotypical child too, so that the expectations don't feel so different?
I agree with that. Yeah. And do you think it's easier to do at home than when we are somewhere at a restaurant where other people are watching and judging? And how do we handle that?
Yes, I do agree with that. A couple of things. I think for one thing, I think we have to think hard about where we do take our children and why and all of those things, which doesn't mean we should exclude them from any opportunities. It's more, let's take them to places we can be successful. Again, it's that same theme. It's not about like, don't take them to a place because other people are going to judge. It's more about, can we all go feel successful and have a good time? So that's the starting point. But I really think it's important for parents in that moment to have some sort of like mantra or grounding thought that says, I'm going to prioritize supporting my child over reacting to the judgment that's around me. It's a muscle that we as parents can build to say, I know they're looking, but they don't know, they don't understand, and I'm going to prioritize my child in this moment. I mean, that is one strategy. It doesn't make it easy. I don't want to like pretend that, oh, then it's all easy. Don't worry about it. Yes, sometimes we do things when we're being judged by other people. Sometimes you'll yell at your child because somebody else is expecting you to when you know that's not going to help.
What are some common misconceptions or limiting beliefs that parents of autistic children often hold? And maybe you have some advice on how they can overcome those to better support the children and their well-being.
I love that question. Thank you for asking that. One limiting belief is that they as parents can't have as big an impact as they think they can, that they think somehow the professionals, they're the only ones who can move the needle for their children. And professionals are really important, and I have deep respect, and I'm so grateful that they're out there to help support us. Parents can also do so much to help their children. And because we're spending the most time with them, we understand them. We don't have to be the ones necessarily to teach them letters and numbers, but we are building their self-esteem. We are helping them feel understood. We are helping them grow self-regulation skills, even if we're not thinking of it that particularly, but we are by connecting in that way. So one limiting belief I would love for parents to, when they catch themselves thinking it, to rethink like, I am such an important, not just person in my child's life, but in their growth and development, that I can really make a huge difference.
If the parent doesn't feel confident enough, they can do the best for their child. What would you say to that?
I guess I would say stop overthinking it, right? Start with the love part. You've got that covered, right? And if you start there, just follow your instincts and love your child and, try to connect and support. That's a great starting place. And then I think it's also very helpful to get some help and support to grow your own skills. I do think, unfortunately, we don't focus on supporting parents enough, that sometimes this stuff isn't intuitive. You have to learn, like, what does it mean to meet your child where they are? What does it mean to adjust the expectation so that they can meet it? What does it mean to then grow the skills, 5-pound weight by 5-pound weight? How do you do that? So I think that getting that kind of support and learning is also very helpful.
Yeah, let's get back to other limiting beliefs.
Believing that your child's potential is limited in the way that they will never do XYZ. Because when you believe that, you won't do the things that will help them reach those goals. Somehow, like if you narrow your expectation in terms of like, if you narrow your belief in their potential, that you won't be disappointed in the end. And I always tell parents, like, you can't prepay disappointment. If you get to a point where they're 21 and they haven't done various things that you'd hope they would do, it's not like having felt disappointment all throughout their lives up to that point makes you not feel it when they're 21, right? So why not just believe and support and work toward it? And if when they're 21, not that that's a magical age, but I'm just using that as an example, if they can't do the thing you hoped they would do, first of all, keep trying because there's no magic to that number, but also like you'll figure it out along the way. You'll figure out what they can do, what does light them up, what does help them feel successful. But it's not like all of that disappointment along the way is going to somehow shield you from something in the future.
They might be capable of doing something that you couldn't even imagine, and their gift is something else.
Exactly. And, we want to help them be the best version of themselves that they can be. So if we're always positive toward, really helping them discover those things and allow the space for them to discover those things and to be that person, I think that it increases the odds of accomplishing that goal.
Yeah, it does. You've been homeschooling your son for 8 years, which is a significant commitment. What factors influenced your decision? And do you have any advice for other parents considering homeschooling their children, their neurodivergent children?
Yeah. Well, I did homeschool him for 8 years when he was younger. He's now 25. So I'm not doing it anymore. I haven't done it in many years. At the time, I did it because I couldn't find an environment in which I felt he was being successful. He's very sensitive, or did at the time. He's outgrown this a lot, but an incredibly sensitive sensory system, and everything was overwhelming. And he tended to go more deeply inside of himself when what we were trying to do was draw him out to connect. So I felt like we were working cross purposes for what we were trying to achieve. I don't think it's necessary to homeschool your child. I'm not out there saying like that's what you should be doing. That was, in our case, what I felt was necessary for my child and what was best for him. I think that it's an option, but it's not necessary.
I know you have a whole system. Would you share some of the main principles that help parents address the challenging behaviors of their autistic children?
Sure. So what I discovered during those 8 years of homeschooling and then through raising him thereafter as well was that we could problem solve or figure things out by looking through a lens of only 6 strategies. So the first I mentioned is model and teach self-regulation. So first to self-regulate yourself, and then also understand that we are really helping our children to build self-regulation that's independently achieved. And what I mean by that is we're not responsible for the regulation, but we want to help create the conditions in which we can help them learn to self-regulate. But that regulation piece is so important. If they're very dysregulated, we want to look again for what is the reason why, and can we do something differently the next time so that they don't get that so dysregulated. The second is set them up for success. And that again is what we've been talking about in terms of adjust expectations to ones they can meet, which helps everybody feel successful and then helps, create the stepping stones for big gains, right? Big gains are achieved with small steps. I also help parents understand how to create and enforce limits, because those are important skills that children need out in the world, right? We were talking about that before with, like they go to school and their teachers create limits, and we need to help them learn how to observe those. But again, it's with support, not punishment. I teach parents about their sensory environments, because if we're not experiencing our sensory system the same way, sometimes we don't realize just how much it impacts a person's functioning. Like using a bathroom, taking a shower has so many sensory elements that we don't even think about. The sound of the water falling on the shower floor, that cold breeze when you're wet that feels horrible, the scratchy towel, like a million things. So helping them become sensory detectives to really understand their child's sensory world. And then the last two are getting their buy-in. really, instead of trying to, make them do things, we're trying to help them want to do those things, right? Helping them understand why they should either want to do it or why it's important or relevant in their world. And the last one is about modeling and teaching flexibility, right? We sometimes tend to get very rigid around things. In part, I get it. I do too, because when things feel like they're getting chaotic, our instinct is to exert more control. But what we need to do is actually be more flexible. And in doing so, also teach our children about how and where to be flexible around the edges.
I love this last part. We are really set in stone, like our way is the right way. That's what we think. And often it's not. So I love this last part. As a tradition, I always ask my guests for book recommendations. Is there a book you'd recommend to any parents that could influence their approach to parenting? It doesn't have to be a strictly parenting book or connected to our topic, just a book recommendation.
Ooh, there are so many. I love the work of Ross Greene. He really talks about changing the lens through which you see your child, and that helps you support them better. I think there's some really good material out there now about autism in girls. I know that it presents differently in girls, and girls tend to mask better so that they're not always diagnosed as autistic until later in life. But it doesn't mean that they're not struggling to meet expectations just the same, which then can lead to burnout. So I'm just mentioning because I'm reading a book right now called Autism in Heels. It's written by a woman who discovered that she was autistic as an adult, but then reflects on ways that it existed in childhood and her needs weren't met. So I really like that one for parents and girls.
Thank you. And as we wrap up, I would like to ask if you had the chance to share one piece of parenting advice with parents worldwide, what would that be?
I would say prioritize support over punishment. That would be my overarching message, because oftentimes we were raised with punishment as the way that we were taught things. We were punished by teachers, we were punished by parents. That was a technique that adults used with children to try to teach them. When using support as the first approach, it just feels better for everyone, and it's so much more likely to be successful.
Exactly, because when we punish our kids, we make them feel worse in order to behave better next time. So it's a little counterintuitive.
Exactly. And they don't always get the point, right? They know they're being punished, but if the reason why they failed to meet the expectation is because they don't have the skill to do it, then punishing them doesn't actually build the skill. Whereas support has the chance of building the skill so that over time, that behavior improves.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing your insights with us today. Could you please tell us where people can further connect with you and access further support?
Sure, absolutely. So my website is autismparentsolutions.com. I have a free training on there and other training materials that people might benefit from. I have a program that is parenting coaching, and it's an immersive program if you want really immersive, intensive help in moving the needle in your family. The information's on my website. Also, you can book a call if you think that it's something you're interested in.
Amazing. I believe a coaching program is much more effective than just listening and reading material, because there's the accountability aspect of it. Someone who holds your hand and holds you accountable.
Yes. And also how do I apply it to my child, right? So many times parents are like, I read all the books, I did all the things, and nothing works. And that's because they tried it, it didn't work, and then they don't know where to go from there. That's where I can help you. I can help say, well, then let's try it this way. Let's tweak it that way. Let's try another thing. And in the process, I'm always training and helping parents learn how to do it themselves so that they can think through, they understand the process of thinking through how to make things better tomorrow.
Yeah, and be ready for any situation.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in and letting me be a part of your day. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes. And if you found today's conversation to be interesting and valuable, please share it with a friend who might benefit from hearing it. Your support means the world.